Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about 4 different modules within the first quarter of this semester, starting off with fundamentals of business, then we're going to move into marketing thought, and then motivations for commercial enterprise, and then accounting thought. So starting out with fundamentals of business, one module reading that I really thought showed the main idea of this was Atlas Shrugged by Russell H. Crowell. Basically, it was saying money is the monetary driving force for every single business out there. So if you don't have money, you're not going to be able to start, and you're not going to be able to keep running within the business. In addition to this, money is extremely powerful, and a business with a lot of money can do either very good or very bad. And this is shown all throughout the reading that basically there's a lot of evil that you can do if you have a lot of money because money is power, but at the same time, there's also a lot of good that you can do. Okay, so now that we've got kind of the main point tucked away and we know what we need to learn, I want to talk about a little bit more of like a real world example that can be applied using this module's ideas. So in the top 5 main reasons why businesses fail, financial trouble are in the top 2. The number one reason why, the most common reason, is basically poor money management. And the second most common reason is losing control of your finances, and both of those are very similar. And I want to talk about a real world example here with Enron Energy. So Enron Energy was this corporation based in Houston, Texas, where they basically provided energy to outsourcing products and other businesses, including natural gas, electricity, liquids, and other commodities. But what they were doing was basically finding these loopholes to hide debt. And they went from being quote unquote worth 100 billion to bankrupt in a single year. And it just shows how basically even just the thought of money is extremely powerful, even though throughout this whole year, right before bankruptcy, they were setting themselves up for failure. But it just goes to show that no matter what, money is really the driving force of a company. And if you don't have enough money, you're eventually going to go under. All right, so there's actually a second reading within this module that I would like to talk about as well. And it's In Pencil by Leonard E. Reed. Basically what In Pencil is talking about, their main idea is something as simple as your common pencil can still be extremely complex. When you really think about it and dive deep into it, allocating all of the materials for a simple pencil can be a very complicated process. You got to have metal for the ferrule to hold the eraser in, and then you have to get the rubber for the eraser, got to get the graphite for the actual pencil lead, as well as finding the wood and manufacturing the wood in order to make the pencil. Also, there's a lot of machinery involved, a lot of labor involved, and simply factory space. So something as simple as a pencil actually requires a lot of stuff and a lot of different businesses that need to come together in order to actually create this very simple product. And I like the idea of In Pencil because it really ties in Atlas Shrugged and In Pencil together, because without all of the money, you're not going to be able to allocate all the different resources from different companies and different factories in order to make these products. Another great example of this from In Pencil is a real world example of the skateboarding business. For example, we'll take BBS Woodshop, which is basically a wood shop that makes skateboard decks. All the things that they need are, for example, trees made into plywood, dyed wood to the press, and then they need materials used to make the glue, factory space, labor, tools and machinery, lacquer and sealant. And after they create the board and all of that stuff, they have to distribute it to online businesses and skateboard shops. And tying in Atlas Shrugged to In Pencil together, you can see that all of these things require a great deal of money. And all of this requires power as well. And without money, you're not going to have any power. You're not going to be able to move any resources around or get the right connections. So it really goes to show that money is a very big driving force and very powerful within the business world. So to kind of finish off this module of fundamentals of business, I want to talk about basically this main point that I've all tried to sum it up as. This is a very broad main point, but I believe it sums up all of the readings from the module and basically the main point of why we're studying this and why we studied fundamentals of business. That is, money is very powerful and can do very bad or very good things within the business world. And the business world is also very complex. And simply put, money keeps the business world going. So if you have money, you have the ability to allocate all of your resources and get the better connections. But if you're running out of money or you have no money, you can't even start in the first place or keep your business going. So without money, basically the business world wouldn't exist. And throughout the readings, you can see that if you don't have any money, you're not going to survive in the business world. So for the next module that I want to talk about, I want to go with marketing thought. And a great reading that I saw that summed up basically every single main point within this module was Natural Selection by Charles Darwin from The Origin of Species. And within this module readings, there were more straightforward readings that kind of described marketing thought in a more straightforward way. But I thought I'd go with this one just because when you really look at it, it really does show basically everything that's related to marketing thought in a little bit more of an abstract way. So basically what natural selection is talking about is resources are limited by nature alone. And it's really up to whoever finds those resources to constantly recreate, test, and rebuild. And that's how you're going to survive. And by doing this, you create more quote unquote traits or more products, more variation, which causes a higher frequency and then higher chances of survival within whatever business industry that you are focusing on. So with that said, marketing is all about advertisements and getting your products out there. And one real world example that I really like to use is Red Bull. And Red Bull has a brilliant marketing team. And basically what they do is they barely post upfront ads, and they're very, very quiet about it. But all of their advertisements are through their countless sponsored athletes and their countless sponsored events that happen every single year. This makes the consumer feel like basically a professional athlete whenever they're purchasing their product versus a different company just doing straightforward advertisements, whether that be like on billboards or on TV or whatever it is. And it's not really relating directly to the consumer, but instead, for example, Red Bull is really getting in touch with the consumer by sponsoring all these professional events and really making sure that the consumer feels like they're a part of Red Bull. And I think that's a great example of marketing thought and how Red Bull is basically like molded their own advertisement and marketing way in order to become a super successful industry. So with that said, let's talk a little bit more about the actual sponsorship of Red Bull and basically how that relates to their advertisements. Red Bull sponsors just about every single extreme sport in the entire world, and they're a huge part of just about every extreme like sport organization or actual event that takes place. They also have countless athletes who are constantly wearing Red Bull apparel and drinking Red Bull, and with all of this media coverage, you can just basically like the advertisements write themselves. This is a great example on the left of a professional mountain biker, and you can see his helmet is a Red Bull painted helmet. And although he's not physically advertising for Red Bull, he's wearing a product that's showing off that he's sponsored by Red Bull and making the consumer feel like, maybe I should buy Red Bull. And then on the right here is an F1 race car that has a Red Bull livery painted on it. And it's just, once again, advertisement is writing itself. If this F1 team does well, Red Bull's going to do well because if they win, it's going to appeal to the consumer. So with that said, this kind of goes back to the first module, fundamentals of business, and talking about how money is power. So with this type of advertisements, over the years, Red Bull has allocated a whole lot of money. And the more money they get, the more they can basically buy out professional athletes and allow them to wear their product and drink Red Bull. And basically what this allows Red Bull to do is when they get more athletes, they get more money. And it's kind of a snowball effect to the point where Red Bull doesn't need to actually have ads. They just need to simply have their professional athletes wear some sort of Red Bull clothing or drink Red Bull, and the media will cover the rest. So with that said, this is a great real-world example of how Red Bull is constantly following Darwin's theory of natural selection. And through marketing, you can see that Red Bull is basically just constantly recreating themselves, testing themselves, and rebuilding themselves. And they do this by every single time that they sponsor a new athlete or sponsor a new event, they are in a way rebuilding themselves and creating a whole new outlet to advertise and in return make more money. So this is basically why Red Bull is the number one energy drink in the whole world, and they're taking in about $6.3 billion in revenue every single year as of a test in 2020. So with that said, just to wrap up marketing thought, basically marketing is all about being creative and reinventing yourself. And it relates a whole lot to fundamentals of business where money is power. If you have more money and you have a good team, you have the ability to create this whole marketing system that will put you on top of the ranks in whatever industry that you're focusing on. And you can quickly become a very powerful business, like how we've seen in the example of Red Bull.